All right, so we're back again. It's another week. We've made it, well, not 50 yet, but we're going to be there soon. And we've got another special guest. This week, we've got Liz, who can kind of speak to, well, what's been in the news pretty much right now. The absolute happenings of what's going on with Fauci, what an absolute fuck he is, and the lives he has impacted and caused to be gone from us now. So if you, of course, I've got Craig as well, but I'm just going to kind of turn over the microphone and just let you talk for a minute and kind of tell us what's happened.
Okay, well, I am a sports therapist. So I run a sports therapy practice, which is partly massage, partly personal training, and partly physical therapy. It's for the rehabilitation of people with athletic injuries or just trying to get themselves up to par. I do have a contract with the local NHL team. So I do a lot of work with those guys when they're particularly stupid.
Sure, sure.
And I was in business with a man named Mike for a number of years, for the past 9 years. And then March 15th rolled around where we were. We got the notification through emergency broadcasting system, just like everyone else did. And we were told with only 24 hours warning, we were not allowed to open until further notice. So all of our scheduled clients, everything that went on, the brick and mortar store, not allowed to be open until in the beginning, it was for 2 weeks. So the 2 weeks passed. I get
Indeed,
another
15 days to
emergency.
slow the
Yeah.
spread, as they say.
Yes, that 15 days passed. We get another notification. We are still not allowed to open. This went on and on and on and on until finally, at the 6 month mark, Mike and I made the decision that we were going to shut down. And because we're paying something like $2,500 a month, no clients coming in, no idea when this is going to stop. They're not giving us a date. They're giving us tentative dates and then moving them out again. So at that point, everything went in storage. And we figured how we'll just do it again whenever things do open back up, if they open back up. And let me put it this way: the fitness industry of which we were a part in our state was closed from March 15th of 2020 until January 25th of 2021.
Ah, that's rough.
10 months.
I mean, that's three quarters.
Yes.
It's more than three
So
quarters.
I've had almost an entire year where I was not allowed by my state and the representatives and all of uh, I was not allowed to work for 10 months, not allowed to have an income. And because I was a business owner, it was 8 months before I was even eligible for like benefits. And the benefits were $250 a week.
Yeah, that doesn't really seem adequate when you're trying to take care of other people and all that.
I'm lucky. My husband's an engineer, so he's got the six-figure income. But if it wasn't for him, I'd probably be in a cardboard box right now. But what makes this story even worse is that July, after we decided that we were going to shut down, like Mike and I made the decision that we were going to, MP Fitness was no longer going to exist. It's gone. That we decided we were going to part ways. He was going to move to back to Florida and whatnot. So he gets there, and 2 weeks after moving into his new place, he is struck and killed by a drunk driver at 6 a.m. on a morning jog. A morning jog, mind you, that man never would have been on if we still had our our storefront.
So,
And several months later, one of my one of my friends who I've been friends with for 27 years, after a similar situation, was in the process of losing her house, losing everything. She was not allowed to work, barely scraping by. She couldn't afford her depression medication anymore, and Michelle took her own life after New Year's Eve. So these are two people in my life that would still be alive if it wasn't for these goddamn lockdowns. So hearing that Fauci lied about them to me is the ultimate insult. It is the I there are two giant holes in my life because this man is a liar. And I'm not the only person with a story like this. But I just want to be the one to say it because I want people to know this is what we're dealing with. This is what people like me have had to grieve through because he lied about everything. And this lockdown didn't even have to occur in the first place.
No,
So my business
no.
doesn't exist. My business partner's dead, and one of my best friends, all for something that didn't have to happen in the first place.
And we've talked about this. I mean, the way to handle it would have been, if you're going to do a lockdown, Craig will certainly agree. If you're going to do it, you
Yeah,
do it hard, you do it fast, you do it targeted, and you get it done. You don't
yeah, we could
draw
have
this out
gotten
and
this
destroy
shit done.
lives.
It could have
Mm-hmm.
been done correctly, um, but it wasn't. And when you see stuff like this happen, the worst thing is that we could have done it right. The worst thing is we probably still could do it right, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
No.
And Steve and I got into large arguments about this. We agree on most of the basic stuff, but when it comes down to the risk assessments versus the response to the risks, when I was talking about it in a theoretical sense, it comes down to the practical part of it. The problem is we really could have done it right, and we simply did not. And in large part, that was due to petty politics, which is disgusting.
And even now, in the practice that I now work for, because obviously now I don't own my business anymore, I work for someone else now, and that's it's weird that after 12 years of working on your own and having your own practice, you now working for someone else, it's a little bit of culture shock. Fortunately, the woman who owns the place where I work is absolutely wonderful, and she allows me the freedom to do my thing my way. But a lot of the protocols that are being put in place are done specifically by people we all know are not in the industry. Like the fact of, like, why would you go and have all the gyms, you can only have so many people in them, you have to sanitize things in a certain way, people have to wear masks when they're working out, which to me is just, it's irresponsible.
Mm.
I don't force my clients to do it. I just don't, because a lot of them, like, and I myself, I'm asthmatic. I can't breathe in those masks. I have to go outside and take mask breaks once an hour. That's, or I'm making out with my inhaler all afternoon. It makes no sense to me. And the fact is, we're still quarantining people like me who are healthy over someone who might die, even though, actually, to be technically honest, I'm one of the people that's at risk because I have asthma and hypertension. So
Well, not only
I
that
don't feel
too.
like people need to be doing this
I
for
mean,
me. Like, I don't want people putting their lives on hold for me. It makes no sense.
well, you can kind of understand where they're coming from, but then you take into account the number one comorbidity of COVID is weight problems. And, what they're doing with gyms is, when we consider that, one of the most counterintuitive things they could possibly do.
So I'll have to say this on that. That is a bit of a confounding frequency bias. America as a country is fat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's straightforward. Um,
Oh, yeah, but people like me are fat shaming tools of diet culture. So,
right there you go. And the other thing is, yeah, if we're going on BMI scale, unfortunately, as much as that scale would be very useful, it's bullshit. So we're also stuck with that problem. Obviously, not everybody's going to be this example here. This is more of an extremum, but say someone like me who is heavier, but I'm much taller and I'm more muscled from being a sports player or athlete in college. And then people like, say, Arnold Schwarzenegger or Stallone, etc. We're all morbidly obese just by the fact that we have muscle mass.
Yeah, that
So
I am saying this without contributing to the fact of, cardiovascular health or, actual
right,
body fat percentage. But
most Americans are not going to have that part. But basically, the point is, as a blanket number, it's a crap scale. It doesn't get any details to the health of the individual. I mean, it gives
no,
you
it doesn't.
no,
a
that's fair.
rough estimate because there's some correlations, But unfortunately, those are just general correlations. There really isn't a way to take that and break it down and apart from the distribution of people that it is averaging over. So, just point of fact, there, it's just not a very good categorization. But yeah, as a country, America is more obese than pretty much the rest of the world. So, it's not really a surprise that you're going to find that as a major comorbidity, especially among the elderly who are less mobile, etc.
Very true. And my grandmother once said to me that the people that died in her nursing home, they went by weight, not by age.
You don't say.
Well, once you
That
lose
was
your mobility, you go downhill pretty quickly, unfortunately. It's, it strains your kidneys. And then as soon as you go on dialysis, you've got maybe a couple years.
Well, I mean,
some
when you've
people
got that much more, when there's that much more body for your body to take care of,
Yeah.
there's that many less resources it can use to fight off an invader. I mean, that
More or
much just
less.
makes sense.
Well,
Intuitively.
so a younger person who's healthier with extra body mass can consume that as they're laying there being sick and basically get the fastest weight loss you can get, aside from just eating parasites.
Sure enough.
And
I
then
mean, look at young people that get sick. They might lose a whole bunch of pounds during that period of sickness, and it's
I mean, there's
legitimately unhealthy. But
for
that's just
example,
the body working optimally.
there's a one was a bodybuilder that got his Twitter 15 minutes, having just come out the other side of being in bed from COVID for months.
Oh yeah, I
He
remember
lost-
that. Some guy. It
Yeah,
was like he was
Yeah, I remember
like,
seeing that.
thick dude, like bulky, and then came out just like a string bean.
Yeah. So that happens because all that glycogen in your muscles will get eaten up by your body, and you'll waste away that way. Now he will bounce back from that and be as buff as he was in about a year. Just because your muscles, you don't lose the cells, you just lose the glycogen from inside them. And because they're polynucleic cells, the bigger they get, the more nuclei they build up into them, and you don't lose those, so they will bulk back up to support all that extra space. But in the meantime, he looks like he just he's fresh into the army there.
Yeah, pretty much. But that being said, yes, absolutely. Even still, in these days of vaccine rollouts and the numbers precariously dropping, still, watch your diet, get your exercise, get enough sun. For the love of God, get enough sun. Vitamin D is incredibly important in fighting this awful thing. And
Just in general.
yeah, and if you're
Very
not getting
important
enough
for your immune
sun,
function.
take vitamin D because it's very important to humans. I promise you.
Talk to your doctor about what you need to take.
Yeah, if you
Would
have
be
one.
my recommendation.
If you don't, maybe still don't take advice from me, but, take advice from people that are knowledgeable.
If you don't have a doctor, go talk to one about this kind of stuff. You should be doing that annually anyway.
But that being
It is
said,
it's
we've...
cheaper than being sick or dying.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we've pretty much just dropped right into, Anthony Fauci is up shit creek, and we all know a lot of things that he didn't want us to know.
I said it last year in fucking February. You should have been fired.
Absolutely. Well, the one thing I can say that you can take to the bank is this. There is one person in any kind of public-facing capacity that carried over from the Trump era. One. And that's Anthony Fauci. So, take from that what you will. But if you're not a fan of the current administration, then that should give you all the answer you need as to his veracity and honorability. Or lack thereof.
We're nearing day 500 on the Johns Hopkins data. I'm pulling up the numbers for you now.
Oh, really?
Well, just the plot so you can see the plot.
Sure.
It's been a while since I threw this into the chat. As soon as it gets done smoothing over 100 days, there we go. So actually, you can see the effect. It's Now, again, it'll take time for us to be able to say for sure whether or not this is even the impact of vaccination, but I'm pretty sure at this point. And you can even see because there's a delay in the deaths, that still has to come out. Here you go. So
you
again,
can see a real well, you can
drop
see
off
the drop.
there.
I mean, and if you
Yeah,
haven't been
that's-
following your own state statistics wherever you happen to be, wherever you happen to be listening, the state or province or whatever you are, because we've actually got a number of Euro listeners, interestingly enough.
Oh,
But
cool.
that being said, wherever you happen to be, if you've been following the numbers, unless you're in someplace like India or where's the other one? They're having a really big problem right now. Somewhere in
Let's
Africa,
see,
I
so-
think. But
Probably. Oh, so Africa had largely not been hit so badly, but that's largely because of the lack of as entrenched and deep infrastructure to infiltrate into the more rural areas. So it's harder for the virus to get there because it's harder for people to get there.
oh yeah, actual
Um,
physical separation is always going to be a
right.
barrier to this sort of thing.
Well, that's what's going
So-
on where I am right now because we're kind of a small town, and you'll
Mhm.
notice our numbers has been steady for the past like 3 months. There's no new cases. If there are, we're not hearing about them
Here's
because people are
India.
just yeah. So we're seeing we're starting to open up more when we got the
Mhm.
notification that people could start going without masks if they're vaccinated. A lot of people are doing it. You're seeing people going out and I went to get to Pete's Coffee the other day, and nobody behind the counters or anything was wearing a mask. And I'm looking forward to that because people are just kind of, they had the opportunity to get rid of it, and they have. And I'm hoping that happens more and more and more.
So I would say this with some cautious optimism here. This would be a great time to make sure that you have a supply of level 2, level 3, or N95 masks at home
Yeah,
before
actually, just
it
to
happens.
break in on that specific topic and masks in general, because it's a reoccurring subject here on the podcast, is masks do work and masks don't work. It all comes
Right,
down to
masks
what you
work.
mean when you say mask. When
Masks are not a category by
yeah,
any means. It's like saying you should play sports because that'll make you healthier. Well, what sport are you talking about?
yeah, precisely.
So
Are we talking esports, or are we talking about actually going out and running around with a ball?
Should I play badminton or should I play professional football? It's very different categories that we're talking about here, just lumping into one word.
So with that being said, your standard masks that you see almost everyone out wearing, if it's a surgical mask, is generally an ASTM level 1, which, as we have seen in the recent Fauci email leaks, does nothing. At best, it catches some cough drops.
Here's the thing. It doesn't protect you, the person wearing it. It was never intended for that job. The reason why everyone needs to wear them is so that you don't get sick from any of them. It is completely reversed the purpose of PPE in the first place. It's level 1 protects the patient from the doctor. Level 2 and level 3 are bidirectionally protective. You need at least a level 2 mask to enter into a quarantine patient room.
Exactly.
So-
and if we take a look at these email leaks and one of his emails to, I believe it was one of the CDC workers. It was
Was it Sylvia or Cynthia? I think it was Sylvia.
yeah, it was one of those. But basically, yeah, she was.
In the chat earlier. You can find it before you input it in the notes, I guess.
Yeah, and he said this very thing to her.
Yeah. So he mentioned specifically the masks that you see in your pharmacy or your corner store. Those are all either unrated masks, which means they're level 1 or worse. Potentially they could be better, but let's be honest, they're not going to be putting in the extra effort there. They're not going to be level 1 or worse. So if they say
essentially
ASTM,
they do nothing.
So they don't protect you. PPE is supposed to protect you. It's personal protective equipment, not public protective equipment. So if you're wearing the inappropriate PPE for the job, then the likelihood that you're going to have an injury or a problem is much higher. especially if you've been lied to, that it has some sort of self-protective effect. And even though there are many efforts made to convey that you are protecting everyone else from you, just in case you have an asymptomatic infection, a lot of people took that and ran with the idea as in you're protecting yourself too, which is not the case. In fact, one of the things that really pissed me off was the promotion of reusable masks like cloth masks, because if you are asymptomatically infected and you are shedding, once the surface of those fibers gets saturated, and this doesn't mean soaked through, but it means saturated as in like it's reached its carrying capacity of moisture. Once that happens, the moisture will film and shed, and it effectively micronizes the droplets impacting those channels before it gets all the way through.
Yeah, it basically took your cough and turned it into a vaporous steam cloud.
Right. And that means that those particulates, those little droplets, will last much longer in the air. They will hang out much longer. It's much harder for them to settle out. So it's actively making things worse after you've worn it for, say, anywhere between minutes and hours. And it's hard to tell inside that where you would fall, because it depends entirely on how well hydrated you are and how much you're exhaling. So,
well, and you also have to think that people are wearing them, taking them off. They're going into a store. They're messing around in that store. Then they're taking it off again. They're putting it in the car, and so they're not doing anything.
Issues. On top of that, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like these things, people are being incredibly unsanitary with their masks.
So we actually covered this in great detail last year when it came to UV that you would require to sterilize them or other sterilization methods. I mentioned that I even consulted and set policy myself for this as a safety issue. Just sterilizing your masks. You should not, every time you use it, you need to take it off and sterilize it. That's why if you're going to be reusing single-use masks, which are designed for the purpose, so level 2, level 3, or N95, you need to, you take it off, you sterilize them for the next use. You're supposed to have several of them in a cycle so that you can make sure you have a clean mask to put on your face.
Yeah, basically, a lot of the things these people are using today, even still, and were using in the early days, these are single-use items. That is their designed purpose. They really weren't meant to be reused.
Yeah.
And people are using and using them. And not even taking these steps we're talking about now to cleanse them properly or to disinfect them.
Yeah.
Which is
so it was a major problem in industry with the healthcare industry when they hit this point where they were told basically your supply chain's broken. You need to find a way to reuse this stuff now. And work was done on that, and that was where like I said, I consulted and then set policy myself for my own group that I did the safety stuff for. So the thing is, the good news is the supply chains are back up, and it is extremely cheap, relatively speaking here, to just go on Amazon, find yourself basically any 3 or 4 layer, I would recommend 4 layer in general, ASTM level 3 mask. It's I think it's gotten down to less than $20 for a box of 50. And if you have any UV setup that you're already using to reuse your masks, it might be worth your time. It might not be worth your time anymore to worry about that if you can just use the disposable ones. Now you might, because they're mostly plastic, you might, industry's basically looking at ways to recycle these things, even though most people are still throwing them out. It's become a huge new waste stream. Which is not only just waste, it's hazardous waste.
Well, yeah, actually,
not just because
I imagine that some of the folks that'll be listening may well have seen some of the pictures. Now, I think I've seen a picture of a seagull with a mask around its neck.
Well, it's the problem is not when they get it around their neck; it's when they eat the things.
Well, no, but that's that iconic environmentalist picture, Like
right, the problem those dolphins with the weird things on the face too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as silly as it can be, it is indicative of the times in which we find ourselves.
So, not to rehash the argument I had with the semantic, we'll be specific on that one. The semantic argument I had with Steve earlier, which was silly as it was. So, Fauci, in my opinion, because he's a board-certified doctor, is supposed to know At any point in his life, he was.
Oh yeah,
He's supposed to know. He's supposed to fucking know that a level 2, like, not only is a level 1 mask useless, which he did say, at protecting you.
Anyway.
Masks do exist that will protect you. He did not mention that to the lady that was asking him for help. He also did not mention to her what type of masks might be available, and the fact that they were available on fucking Amazon.com. Overnight shipping. She could have had it in her hands the next day. So, in my opinion, just and I understand he's answering a whole bunch of emails and so on. There's a pile of them there. Was it 3,234 pages of emails from just a few months? So that includes a lot of the copies and replies and so on. But it's still, that's a decent amount of email exchange. So I get that his time is already kind of crunched, and I've been there myself. But like, you gotta, if you're gonna give that as a definitive answer, like she went away thinking wearing the mask isn't gonna help, and I don't have to worry about it ever, and there isn't like an option to make that make sense and work better, when there clearly was one. And he was aware of this because the rationale behind lying to the public about masks in the first place, which is what he did when they said everyone needs to wear a mask to protect everyone but themselves.
Yeah, exactly. When he finally owned up to it, he finally said, "Hey, my bad, guys. We needed to make sure that NIH
that was his
our people got
cover your ass answer."
And he didn't even really come out with a "my bad." It was like, "Well, we had to take care of our people first. Eat a dick."
Yeah, that was the thing that pissed me off. So basically, my point was there were multiple ways that he did it, but he lied to the American public for a significant amount of time. He towed the same line that the Democrats were towing at the time, which was everything's going to be fine. Oh, don't worry about it, etc.
Yeah, go down to Chinatown.
Go hang out in Chinatown.
Yeah, have a Chinaman cough down your throat.
Then the Wings decided to switch idiocy because, at that point everyone was saying, oh, it's just the flu, or hey, it's not just the flu, and you guys should take it seriously because Trump's getting impeached and we don't want to focus on that. And then the after the impeachment, mid to late February, everything switched wings because reasons. And the problem was that Fauci's statements switched over to, everyone needs to take this very seriously, etc. The man is very conveniently aware of his professional capacity and the need to only present himself in his professional capacity in public, as a public figure, when it's convenient. Say when he's getting questions on the Senate floor.
Oh, you could say that Fauci lives a very convenient life.
And then, of course, when he leaves the Senate floor, he also finds it very convenient to opine on things that he would otherwise not opine on in a personal capacity because he has professional responsibilities. Say when he goes on CNN, MSNBC, ABC, etc., he's happy to go ahead and talk about his personal beliefs there and then, outside of his professional capacity and outside of the reasons that he would give on the Senate floor, which is, in my opinion, double-faced and it's just asinine. And he is well within his rights to do that in both situations, which is even worse.
Well, I mean, you can lie. There's nothing stopping you from lying, but
when you employee with a professional responsibility, so that is multiple layers of honesty that he is violating in a row there.
Oh yeah, no, the man has no ethical well, he does have ethical standards, double standards.
Yeah, when Dasha comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, we can just take his questioning in front of the Senate with Senator Paul, specifically, calling him out on these things that his own emails reveal him being involved with.
So a lot of the back and forth between Fauci and Paul pissed me off because both of them would talk about masks in the same way, which is without ever specifying what they're talking about. So Rand Paul would say they don't work, and he'd be partly right, and Fauci would say they work, and he'd be partly right. And this is the same, bitching fit Steve and I have on occasion, is that you need to be specific about things. And even so, like, Steve has a point when he talks about training and fitment. Sure. Something that is not properly placed on you is not going to work. And if you don't use it in the way you're supposed to use it, it's not going to work.
Well, kind of like a gun, you know. I mean, it's going to do what it's going to do one way or the other, but if you don't use it right, then something could go wrong.
A hammer is a hammer until it hits your thumb, and then it's that thing you throw over your shoulder. So
there you go.
so the big issue here is that over a period of a year, I'd say that it is well within reason that you can get most people to use a mask appropriately if you don't come at them and make them being angry at you more important than wearing the damn mask. Which, unfortunately, every politician in the country, and that's Democrats and Republicans, both of them, every fucking one of them has made it worse with their rhetoric.
Oh, sure.
Because it's not a political slogan platform you're putting on your face, you know, unless you're using one of those reusable pieces of trash. It's a piece of equipment to make you safer in some situations, and that's it. It's you know, Republicans and Democrats have different views on some tools, but like I'm pretty sure nobody's going to say having a hammer in your garage makes you a serial killer.
Well, I mean, why do you have that fire extinguisher? Are you some sort of arsonist going out starting fires everywhere?
Right. See, this is the thing I'm talking about. Is that is the way the rhetoric has been spun out, and it's insane. It is truly insane that they are expecting in any way for that to come back and be a benefit to them later on. These same people that were so cynical about it before, you watch, the narrative is starting to flip. I've already gotten told by some Hollywood Yahoo in the last week. It was last week or the week before. No, it was last week. That it's not his problem if somebody has been vaccinated. He's going to go without the mask. You're going to see very soon Democrats going without the mask and saying everybody who hasn't been vaccinated must wear the mask, or if you're wearing a mask, that's your problem, etc. Just stay home. The narrative is going to flip once again. It's going to be retarded as it always was. And my prediction here, and I really don't want to be right again, believe me, is that they're going to start spreading around variants like idiots because they're all going to be walking around with anti-protective equipment on, and they're going to be doing normal things as business as usual again.
Well, once their smugness reaches full 100% smug, then they'll just start going around like they were, much like Gavin Newsom has been this whole time, just living their life and everything, and then they'll probably make it worse as they do.
Well, see, it's gonna be Pfizer and Moderna's fault for not protecting them. It's not going to be their own fucking fault for not paying attention to any of the intricacies. This is why I said before, variants should be treated as new viruses because they are. Yeah. And so think of it like this: nature abhors a vacuum. You've just created a giant vacuum in the natural selection process by wiping out the replication capacity of one of the components of it. So the immune evading variants are going to become the majority share of infections that happen. And if you're walking around without a mask and you have a vaccine, but you get exposed to an immune evading variant, while you're probably not going to die or get into a hospital, you're still going to get sick probably, and you're still probably going to spread it. And that's how you get to the point where something truly nasty does come out, where that important protection of no hospitalization, no deaths goes away. That's how we get to a worse strain. Basically, the ability of these things to spread is going up as we make it harder for them to spread, as a selection pressure.
Or the
But was there ever a possibility? Was there ever a possibility of there being no infections, no deaths? That just doesn't sound like something reasonable to me.
Well, I mean, in the very earliest days, yes.
Okay.
Now,
okay.
No. It would be a fool's errand to even attempt that now. But at one time, yes.
Vaccines. Then, if we're talking about the vaccines, basically, even with the immune evading variants, so basically the immune evading variants make the quoted efficacy.
Just to be specific here, we're talking about the ones that are mentioned as, I believe, the British variant, the Brazilian variant, and I think there's another that's recently cropped up, an Indian variant, I believe. That
we're talking about immune evading. So the UK variant is not immune evading. That one is covered. That's also the most prominent infection in the United States right now.
No, I thought there was a new one. I could be mistaken.
So there's a South African variant. There's the P1 and P2 variants out of Brazil. There's the Indian variant, which has two unfortunate mutations at the same time. And then there's the California variant, there's a New York variant. Those are both immune evading, which is hilarious.
Of course. Well, if you pack a whole bunch of people into giant buildings together and, use it as a petri dish to build a better coronavirus, you'll build a better coronavirus.
Imagine that.
Go figure. Thanks.
The UK variant is not immune evading. Actually, I think one of the two United States variants is not immune evading. One of them is.
That's comforting, at least.
I can't remember which one. It might. I remember the California. Okay, I think the California variant is the one that's immune evading. Anyway, important thing is there are immune evading variants that are out there, and as we wipe the floor with the non-immune evading variants, the ones that are covered by vaccines, the other ones are going to fill in the gaps as far as infections go, and they're the ones that are going to drop the efficacy of the vaccines down when it comes to when they say efficacy in general, usually they're talking about the ability of the virus to cause a symptomatic infection. There are other types of efficacy that are characterized but are not necessarily going to be used as the selling point, namely the severe infection / hospitalization and death. Those two statistics are also important. Now, there are some retrograde or breakthrough infections from these vaccines, and so these are typically going to be from people because once you get the shot, most people aren't going to check if they've actually gotten the immunity with a blood test later on. They're not going to get the antibody test, even though I recommend that they do.
Yeah, nobody did that with me at all.
Yeah. So by the way, just if you're when they talk about a percentage efficacy for the symptomatic infections, and they say Pfizer's 95% or 91% effective, Moderna is 90% effective, Johnson & Johnson's I think 70-odd %, 60% effective.
65.
But yeah. Yeah, when they talk about these efficacies, they're talking about symptomatic infection. The other fraction that gets infected, some of these people had immunity, and then for whatever reason, it just failed. Those are the people who are going to be completely screwed because they're going to think they have immunity anyway. But there are people who get vaccinated who do not retain immunity. It's a small fraction of people. It is significantly less than the gap between the 90-odd % and 100. But those people do exist, and there's enough of them out there where they should go and get checked. They should see if they've got the antibodies, because if you don't get the antibodies, that's the first defense your body has, is to try and glom up the viruses while your immune system is reacting, which takes about 2 days to really take off, to produce more of the T cells, more of the antibodies. A white blood cell has to recognize an invader, capture it, and not one of the hunter T cells which you generate from the vaccine. That's the one that maintains immunity. The ones that go back and tell the lymph nodes, get angry, and send out the army. Those are the regular T cells that float around that have no specialization. Those pick up a pathogen. They take about 2 days to get back to the lymph node and activate it. And in that 2 days, the lymph node, the B cells and T cells inside, you'll get hunter T cells that are activated and will proliferate. The B cells get activated, and then they divide a couple times. Half of them produce antibodies until they die, and then half of them stay around as memory. So, that time window, that 2 days, is when an infection can get a hold of you and do breakthrough. It's when it can become symptomatic. So if you don't have any antibodies to slow that process down at the beginning, then I would say you need to know. And as much as the testing labs are backed up, they're not so backed up that people who get vaccinated can't, over a period of months, piecemeal go in there and just casually get the test done, get those results. Because I think it's far more important to you as a person, personally, to know this than to have that kind of looming over you there. I mean, if you trust the vaccine wholeheartedly already, fine, that's great. If you don't trust it and you have other issues with it, then fine. But if you got the vaccine, you wanted to get it, and you're happy with it, etc., I would say, just for peace of mind, get the blood test for the antibodies and just make sure you got them.
No, I mean, that's not unreasonable.
It's after when you're supposed to have when you're supposed to be immune a couple weeks after your last dose of whichever. That's a great time to get ready to get test. My next GP visit's towards the end of this month, so I'm going. That's one of the things on my list to do.
I think the part of the problem here too is one of the things that we're encountering. I personally have not had an in-person doctor's appointment in over a year. It's done via Zoom, and if I go to have blood tests, I go to a trailer on the lot. Somebody, full PPE, takes my blood, and then I get results later. That's what's going on. And of course, I'm in California, so they're not doing anything of any sense.
Yeah,
they're not making any sense. But that's what's happening with the Kaiser Permanentes out here. They're nothing in person, nothing at all.
So I'm in Florida, so like I just go see my doctor. Like I got back here in the middle of the summer last year, and I went and saw my doctor in person. Like it hasn't been like that. I totally get Kaiser being like that.
Yeah, there's a few places in America that are in a bad way, and you have my sincerest condolences for having to be trapped in one of them.
Yeah. So it's.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I think you probably had more to talk about this week.
Well, I mean, more really in regards to what we've been discussing. I mean, because a lot of it ties together. Just overnight, we have another piece out of the Washington Post, no less.
That
linked
piece.
This basically regarding the debate over the coronavirus, and
I hope picks up the phone because I fucking called it.
Yeah, we've been saying this for a long time. I think it even came up in episode 1, if I'm not mistaken, that this came from a laboratory. What it is and why it got out and how, well, there's certainly a debate to be had there, but basically the whole world is now on one page. This came out of the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
I think this clears it up perfectly here, and it makes complete sense, and this screams industrial accident to me, and it's very straightforward. There aren't like with the facts that are out, there aren't details you have to put a tinfoil hat on to get past. Especially with the fuckery that they did in the Lancet and Nature, with the way that they were shitting on the idea that this could happen in a disgusting display of bias, anti-science bias, embarrassing the entire community. Like, I don't see why anybody would ever trust those journals again for allowing those pieces to be published. So, Wuhan lab, they were conducting experiments to try to get the bat coronavirus to infect mice that carrying human-like lung cells, and 3 workers that were involved got sick.
This is in the autumn of 2019, as a by the by.
Yeah. These were the 3 people that got sick in the lab that are admitted to have gotten sick, mind you. That they were involved in the experiments to modify these bat coronaviruses, or modify this bat coronavirus. Mind you, also that it's also come out that some people who are workers in the caves where this was sourced inhaled, as they're mining bat guano to use as fertilizer, which is a very good source of phosphate, etc. So excellent fertilizer. Unfortunately, it's China, so their safety standards are you get to inhale the guano dust while you're chipping away at it. And several workers got sick and died. They may have just died from toxic exposure or from having a whole bunch of crazy stuff grow in their lungs because they're inhaling bat crap.
Sure.
But if it was exposure to coronavirus that jumped directly from bats to humans, some reporters tried to visit that site.
Yes, that actually came up in the stories today. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I heard the specifics of what happened there. When they tried to visit the site, there was a truck, like a semi, I think, but a large truck that had gotten into a wreck on the road there.
A personnel truck was blocking the road.
Yeah.
Conveniently blocking the road for access, the only road to access the area.
Yeah, well, you know how these things happen.
The Wuhan Institute of Virology's labs were conveniently off limits during Dashik's the probe that Dashik led on behalf of the WHO. The guy with the conflict of interest. By the way, the NIH did fund the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It was just that they directly funded them indirectly via a contract. So the way it works with a government contract is with the SBIR, so small business, et cetera, whatever. EcoHealth International got the grant from NIH. They then subcontracted work.
Everyone listening, you should know the name Peter Daszak. Do not forget that name.
Yeah. That guy is a real piece of shit. So his company, EcoHealth International, as a quote charity, got a grant contract. Got a grant contract from NIH. I don't know if it was an SBIR or whatever, but it was probably an SBIR. Regardless, you're allowed to disperse those funds as agreed inside the contract. Typically, that allows you to subcontract out to other institutions or organizations to get some of the work done to meet your goals. This is great because otherwise small businesses could never contact with universities to get jobs done, and this is how a lot of grad students get paid, just speaking from experience here. So EcoHealth International subcontracted out with the Wuhan Institute of Virology because previously the United States had instituted a blanket ban on gain-of-function research because it's like a nuclear weapon, and we're still dealing with nuclear non-proliferation to this day, mind you. We saw it as a repeat of that unfortunate mess. So while it's great for making vaccines, the disaster potential of creating viruses that are so horrible for people, and the fact that people who work even in a BSL-4 lab in America can get infected, let alone in China can get infected.
Yeah, and we know people in America, where we actually have legitimate safety standards and care about human life, if people in America can get in danger in these level 4 labs with all of their protocols, all of their protections, and people that are genuinely trying to do things right, you can only imagine the kind of bullshit fuckery that goes on at a Chinese lab.
So, point being, so the scientists themselves, I believe, are going to be very competent in trying to get stuff done appropriately. When they say worker, that's a broad category, because the problem is in those labs, the technicians and the cleanup crews, so, basically you think of as what would be in America a better paid janitor, they take the test animals and sell them off to the wet markets when they're done with them under the table, which is probably not how, like, the animal probably didn't infect anybody at the market. It was probably the person who sold the animal. And this, again, is something we covered as a suspicion.
And this is, of course, even if the animal was the vector at the lab.
So, again, point being here that patient zero is probably a person who walked to the wet market.
Oh, yeah. Basically, one way or the other, patient zero was a Wuhan School of Virology employee, and not some random nobody at the wet market.
So EcoHealth International says, okay, we want Wuhan Institute of Virology to do work. They then tell the NIH, here is the place that the funds are going to. And the NIH then approves dispersal of funds from NIH to Wuhan Institute of Virology, not to EcoHealth International for those specific funds. So the government disperses directly to the places where the funds need to go, and that's generally speaking how that works. It depends on the structure of the contract, but that's very common. So yes, the NIH did directly fund gain-of-function research, but indirectly because the direction of that money was left at the hands of a third party. So while the money went directly from the U.S. to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the direction of the money came from EcoHealth International, to whom the money was awarded in the first place. So technically it was their money, but technically it was also the government's money.
Basically a large group of technicalities, as so many good government programs are.
The problem is, like the whole mask thing between Fauci and Paul, you can be right saying the exact same things on either side of that, and still also be wrong. it's lacking the lack of specifics in discussion and in communication here is a major problem with the way these talks are being held, and it really leads to a lot of confusion more than it does any kind of help. And it's a lot of it's due to political posturing. In large part, it's just due to political posturing. Fauci is a bureaucrat. He's not a politician as much as he wants to be one. He's not an elected official. He could be fired at any time at the president's leisure because he works in the executive branch.
Well, if we're to believe old Jen Psaki, he's not going anywhere. Yeah. But I imagine Monday's going to carry a slightly different tone.
Oh, I don't think so. He's a Democrat through on this one. Like he has.
They'll find him a nice golden parachute. I have no doubt.
So that's the thing Burks probably should have been the lead on a lot of this stuff, and I mean she got screwed in a whole different way and got reduced down to basically parroting Fauci's positions.
Yeah, the CDC really. I mean, as much as the CDC has done some dumb shit during all of this, they should have been at the lead.
Oh, so speaking of the CDC, then you got the former head getting death threats from scientists.
That also is something that came out this week, yeah.
And whereas the current head, this is now weeks in the past, was on TV crying about people not complying with mask requests, let alone mandates. Sitting there crying on national television about the future and how much she's worried about it. Say, well, crying about it on TV as the head of the institution responsible for managing disasters like this is not a good look for the country. It's not a good look to the rest of the world for the country. It's not a good look to the people of the country. It's stupid.
No, not at all.
Come back when you're put together. Cut off the interview. At least then it's just speculation if you're falling apart.
Yeah, it's like the people that are in charge of Biden. They know well enough to keep him off of television and on teleprompter. Because when he goes off script, you can tell.
Yeah, it's kind of like Bush going off script.
Fool me can't get fooled again.
Well, I mean, just saying here, when he tried to do the penny parable, and that did not go well.
Oh, speaking of pennies, have we discussed the 39 million that also came from the Pentagon and went to same said Wuhan lab?
So that's the other fun bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
By the way, I didn't mention we banned all funding in the U.S. for gain-of-function research. That standard was relaxed a few years ago now to allow us to fund this research in China. So that was no longer you could no longer directly fund it, and this is where it was that technicality thing again. You could no longer directly fund it as the government, but you could have another institution have you give money to them.
And this is how you get Wuhan City, Raccoon City. Which one was it again? Well, anyway.
Yeah, the literal freaking umbrella corporation.
Yeah. I mean, this is where these kind of things crop up and come from. And, I mean, we're all actually kind of living through a really mediocre horror and or spy thriller right now.
Now, taking it from the Department of Defense's perspective here, from the Pentagon's point of view, I can easily see the argument that they would make. And that is that if China is already... Because remember, the CCP does have a vested interest in a BSL-4 lab in a city that they don't think is worth a damn. Because Hubei is like the... no offense to Alabama, but we'll say it's the shithole of the U.S., just for sake of argument.
Yeah, Wuhan was just some little nowhere town. It was one of the ghost towns that we've actually reported on in some other episodes.
The Hubei province is China's anus, so to speak. They don't care. They think they're all bumpkins there. They wouldn't care if they went away. They built a BSL-4 lab there because if there was a disaster, oh well. So the Pentagon, basically, their perspective, I could easily see them saying, well, they're going to have a vested interest in using that as a site to do interesting research when it comes to virology. And the U.S. isn't going to pursue that same research here and participate in the one of the dumbest deterrent mechanisms, even though it's the most effective so far, against full-scale horrible wars, mutually assured destruction, then maybe we could find a way to get them to do the research for us without us having to do it. I could easily see that being the argument they made, and I could easily see that 39 million being in part a bribe to get the data to come back to us, where the intelligent people over here can pour through it and make things happen on our end without approval or legal status. The same way in a lot of ways, a lot of the nuclear stuff was done. For instance, figuring out the effects of such high doses of radiation on the human body in the 80s and late 70s and 80s. There's that one place that they're doing some pretty nasty work in when it came to nuclear materials, and a couple of people that died very horribly, and then the one guy's basically his whole body got stolen by a government scientist and then studied over a period of time. The sad thing is that gave us a lot of really useful information, and it definitely should not have happened. Like it only recently has that family gotten closure on that.
That's tragic.
You know, the casket was leaded and closed, so they couldn't see who was inside, and there'd be no way of knowing because it was lead lined when they had the funeral. So they didn't know the body was stolen for a while until they got a FOIA release, and then it came up in the news in the 90s, and then like in the early 2000s, they finally got the full story on it, and then I think Kyle Hill, one of the science YouTubers, well, science communicator YouTubers.
Sure.
He's still good. Kyle Hill did he had a series on nuclear disasters and technologies. So I think like the elephant's foot of Chernobyl kind of nuclear, and one of them was on this particular incident. The doctor that stole a body, still mental. So I can easily see the Pentagon going through this and being shrewd and cynical about it, thinking if they're gonna get something for nothing out of this, if they're not going to be able to do it here at home, they can at least offload the risk and the expense to China.
Well, yeah, I mean they're going to be doing this awful shit anyway, so I mean, you might as well get something out of it. Never mind that we, ought to be trying to stop them, but I guess that's neither here nor there.
Right. There's also other curiosities, like, for instance, the fact that this virus was cataloged, only the original source virus that they were working on was cataloged back in, 2015 or whatever, and the Bat Lady of Wuhan Institute of Virology fame renamed the sample so that it looks like it was a different one, even though they had the exact same genome.
Well, actually, we should clarify on that, too, because I know exactly what you're talking about. She changed the name after the outbreak occurred. To attempt to how shall we say make a bit of a smoke screen, you might say. Right.
So not only that, but they went in and I remember this specifically last year. There was a minor little hubbub about it, but minor in the sense that most of the people who were already complaining about how the lab leak is impossible. There's a minor little thing about them going in and trying to delete 3 records out of the international database from their account. Or just change, at least make some edits to the genes, and that wasn't allowed, obviously.
Yeah, that's not the way the system works.
Right. So I think of it more like Wikipedia, where there's a versioning system. So they tried to go in and delete versions after trying to make an edit. So that did not work.
Basically, trying to cover up.
Oh yeah, exactly that.
And again, just to be clear, this is not insinuating gain-of-function research for nefarious ends, specifically to infect humans. It's not even insinuating that gain-of-function was involved yet, even though that's likely what happened. All this is insinuating is that a was located there. All we know is that a virus was located there. There was an attempt to obfuscate the presence of that virus in the database after the outbreak began.
Now, that being said, there are any number of highly peculiar coincidences associated with this. And there are also any number of ways in which it can be taken. If we take into account the Shincheonji death cult out of South Korea, for instance, there's an instant vector with not only the means, but the method of spread. So there's that. There's also, just some schmuck selling an infected bat and, getting infected themselves. We've also got the avenue of some workers getting sick working on it in the lab. And that still doesn't answer the question, is this a weapon? Maybe. Is it a research project? Maybe. Is it somebody at the lab thinking, man, she is going to love me if I make the coolest, killiest coronavirus ever? We don't know. We really don't. But
So
we do know that it
about
has been capitalized upon by the CCP.
Yeah. Yeah, so after the outbreak began, the CCP learned the wrong lessons from SARS and then again from MERS, and that they were able to purposely delay the extent of which things had gone to crap. And their plan, and again, this is just so typical of a communist regime fucking up royally on their own goals. The plan was for the virus, and this is my speculation, for the virus to go around and then for China to show up as the savior and kick off the Chinese century. And if you don't know what that is, look it up. The Chinese century in a big way to really kind of take back the couple decades that the U.S. has already stolen from them.
By golly, we're going to come around and save you all. We're going to build a Belt and Road, and we're going to solve this big old bad virus.
You can see it everywhere, because right now it was originally set that they were going to provide humanitarian aid and they're going to provide vaccination basically gratis. And then later on they'd say, hey, but we saved you. But what they've switched over to is selling the 2 Chinese vaccines rather than just handing it out. And I can't believe this. It's also another thing that was recent. WHO approved Sinovac for use in COVAX and also for distribution to other countries.
Never minding the fact that they have a lower efficacy rate than the Johnson & Johnson, and they have a much lower rate than the Johnson & Johnson in avoiding negative side effects, which it does excel at.
If you hadn't seen that in the videos I was saying earlier, one of the very common side effects, and unfortunately it's the CCP, so we don't have any fucking data on it.
This. Yes.
Hearing loss.
Yes, you could go deaf from the Sinovac.
So it could be that it's a rare side effect. It could be very common. We have no way of knowing. And
that's a mystery.
That's worse than why we stopped the Johnson & Johnson rollout. We put a pause on that over a potential problem that was very, very minor. And they aren't releasing any information, and there's just tons of anecdotal evidence that needs to be addressed with data, and it's not being addressed with data. Like, anecdotal evidence is useless when you have data on hand. When you don't have data, it's the reason why you need data.
Yeah, as it is. I mean, how many anecdotes do you need until you've got a fact, right?
I'd say if you have one person with hearing loss, you should do a study on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we look at what happened with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. That's 8 women, all on a specific birth control. We find this out,
right.
And there's, a huge hubbub about it. Huge, big blow up for about a week or two. Like, don't take the Janssen vax. Hold up on that one. We don't know what's up. Never mind that a bunch of people died from the AstraZeneca with a similar effect that weren't on, something identifiable. Or the weirdness with the Moderna and the Pfizer. But
so, point being here, like, this vaccine was, and it's no surprise with Tedros in charge, who is a complete disaster as a human being, let alone as a person running the WHO. Tedros should never have been put in that position. It is China's WHO right now.
Oh, to say the least.
East Taiwan says that it's the CHO, it's the Chinese Health Organization, and then West Taiwan is just upset about everything.
And just to clarify for those unclear, West Taiwan is the large mainland portion of Taiwan. It is slightly to the north and across the water. The Strait of Taiwan, I believe they call it.
It's north of the South Taiwan Sea.
Yeah, the South Taiwan Sea, yes, indeed. I tell you, those mainland Taiwanese people, they are so rude. So rude. They should be a lot more polite to their island rulers. But who are we to say? I wouldn't want to come off xenophobic, speaking so poorly of these lesser Taiwanese people.
Okay, so we had a couple other things to talk about. Oh, so a couple minor things for filler here. Anonymous decided to go ahead and make it as. By the way, it's not the Anonymous of infamy. It's the shit spawn of Anonymous since 2014.
Yeah, well, I know exactly what you're talking about, and we don't even know if it's anonymous. It's someone with a voice changer, or actually someone with a text reader, claiming to be anonymous.
No, Anonymous is never coming back. Just FYI, guarantee you that's not happening. I can tell you from personal knowledge of that one. It's never happening again, ever. That got so clusterfucked by moral fags at the end that it's never happening again. It was hilarious, and now it's done.
Yeah.
Anything that happens again after that is all going to be done without it being called anonymous. Like there's, the Guy Fawkes mask was a joke, and then it got taken seriously.
Yeah, if anything more happens with that, it either glows in the dark or is just idiots.
So yeah, we left them all the tools. They're welcome to them, but good luck. A lot of those are no longer effective, and you can expect to see a couple of alphabet soup people show up at your door.
But just to clarify, because you're more familiar on this than I am, I only just watched the video and just kind of cringed out. So break it down for the folks who don't mind.
Unfortunately, that's a lot of what I did too. From what I gathered, they spent like 3 or 4 minutes shitting on Elon Musk for still doing stuff in actually it's funny, another story that's related. He went ahead against all good judgment. They decided to open up a thing in China. Who promised to do certain breaks for them, and then immediately reversed that decision the moment that they got a hold of the contracts from Tesla. So you win some, you lose some, and maybe one day they'll fucking learn not to trust them.
Maybe
at least not without some like capital insurance on hand, some way to get their skin in the game before they actually break ground over there.
And just as a by-the-by, that whole brake scandal with the brake problem that was causing the trouble with Teslas, that has since come out as being fabricated.
So Anonymous was upset that Elon Musk had, done anything with cryptocurrencies and jogged around the price of Dogecoin and Bitcoin, etc. Even though it was in all probability, it was not Elon Musk that did any of that with Bitcoin, but definitely had the effect on Dogecoin, which is hilarious. And Dogecoin is now on Coinbase, which is one of the bigger exchanges. So a lot of people have dived into that, and the price is just depressed a bit further. But it'll come back up. It's that's the nature of these things.
And just as a quick by-the-by on Musk and his recommendations, he did recently come out with not a recommendation, he just mentioned it. It was some porn tracker coin. It's a complete and total shit coin. Don't touch it.
It's hilarious. It's hilarious.
I honestly thought that was a joke. I really thought that was a meme.
It basically is. It's a scam. But it's hilarious.
Yeah, totally. It's like 1,000% scam.
Just the name of the stuff.
I don't remember the currency off the top of my head, but the coinage itself is called cummies.
Yeah.
It's just fucking funny. And he got that to trend on Twitter for hours just by mentioning it the one time. But that's a classic pump and dump scam.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, say what you will about the guy, but I mean, he is, these days, the king of pump and dump.
I don't even know if he was in on that. He probably just saw it and laughed and tweeted out about it.
Oh, yeah, no, that's the funniest thing of all is, I mean, a lot of this shit, he's not really even directly involved in these things. Like, the company's doing what it's going to do, one way or the other. But just by nature of his, you could say bombastic personality, he just causes these insane shifts. But also because of our completely schizophrenic marketplace.
Yeah, I hope I'm not destroying your list of notes there as I'm going. I'm scrolling backwards up through the chat here, basically.
Oh no, not at all. And as a matter of fact, since we're on the topic, and we generally do cover it every week, where we're sitting right now, AMC is doing gangbusters. It's at $47.91. GameStop, it might as well go on the S&P 500 at this point. It's 248.36. It's
You might mention what these were a week ago too.
let
Just
me.
to get people actually know what doing well means.
Yeah, I should say that. So, GameStop today. Let me see here. Let me go back for a week.
I didn't mean to ruin your flow there.
Oh no, my Weeble's got to update. Grumble. I hate it when that happens. There we go. Okay. So, go back a week. All right. So, if we go back far enough, this chart looks absolutely astounding. So, we go back to September, and we look at a price of $7.46 for GameStop, and we go to today, and we look at an end price of $248.36. Mind you, it's the weekend. The markets are closed. It's not going to be starting back up. But, yeah, there you go. So, anyway, we look at a week ago.
Be mad.
We're looking at, the trading varies, but $160, $170-ish dollars 1 month ago. 1 week ago. Ranging 219 to 180. So this is again, none of us here are investing advisors, but maybe pick up some GameStop if you got some extra money.
Yeah. Also, I don't have skin in the game on regular stocks. So that's a solid gain out of nothing.
Oh yeah, that's money for nothing.
Hedgies go and cry. That is awesome.
Another one that might be worth your while. That's kind of a meme stock. BlackBerry. Actually, I will say I own a little bit of that. But the thing is, I've come to understand BlackBerry is actually doing a little bit of I want to say infrastructure, but I don't know the exact terminology for what they're doing. They're apparently doing a lot of the back end in autonomy related markets. So that's
okay.
That's probably a strong investment. Nokia, another one. It's doing Nokia's just solid, and they're not really going to get crazy until the announcements come. So Nokia what's that?
So the stock's the same as the fucking phone. Indestructible and going nowhere.
Well, it's on a steady rise. And we could say that it's going to the moon, and we could say it literally, because Nokia has been tapped to run the American 4G network on the moon. And
really?
So once those rockets start going up with Nokia technology, that stock's going to be going up with it. So
holy shit! Yeah.
So get in now while the price is fair. I got in at $4. I'm at $5.48 right now. So I'm happy as a clam, and it's just going to keep going.
That is a long-term investment. Long-term investment. Now, again, none of us here are investment advisors, but hang on to that shit.
Yeah. Get yourself in on some Nokia and AMC. Movie theaters. Yeah, they've taken a bad hit during this last year, but we're opening back up. And people are being stupid and doing all the things that they maybe should be kind of smart about, and they aren't. So,
well, let's see. The first news you hear about variants becoming a problem, probably in, say, a few months, that'd probably be the time to dump it again. But I don't know.
But as they say, by that same logic, buy the dip.
Right.
So we've had our little stock update for the week. Dogecoin going 0.3768 as your update for the week. So it is it's pretty stable in the 30 cents range. So if you're wanting to buy, I would say now is a comfortable time. A lot of people have said you can look at Dogecoin as kind of a cash to your Bitcoin as kind of your savings.
Funny. It should have been Bitcoin Cash. That was the cash.
But
I'll go ahead and walk out now.
But that's our crypto and coinage update and everything for the week.
Conflict of revenge here. The GOP flipped the mayorship of McAllen, Texas.
Indeed, they did. and this was a concern.
So it's hilarious. So the thing is, Democrats think of Hispanics as a monolithic block, the same way they think of black people as a monolithic block. They don't think that there's any variation in the politics. So they are confused as hell as to how Hispanics in Texas, and they make up a good amount of people in Texas, how the hell could they have conservative values?
How could a largely Christian, heavily family-oriented demographic have conservative values? I mean, that makes no sense to me. Some
right.
mystery.
You see, they're all Latinx.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, you can't forget about the Latinx. They're
I hate that. I hate that with Latinx because it's somewhere between like Malox and Terminex. Like that branding has been pounded into my head because of the '90s. And so when they say that shit, it sounds horrible to me because it sounds like they're trying to use like a term for a fucking insecticide with a sombrero on it.
Yeah, it's like either we're looking at an odd character from Speed Racer,
problem, but
or we're looking at a bad pronunciation of something. So either way, it's kind of stupid. It's like, have we got Racer X over here, or have we got the Sinks?
On it. Playing fucking Despacito.
What? Oh yeah, you something else you had mentioned in here that a lot of people are kind of talking about in some of the same spheres that we run in is Gates. So we do know, and we can say there is some kind of connection there because Bill Gates is into all kinds of fuckery. And his money goes to all sorts of weird fuckery as well. And that's why I give it to you, sir.
Okay. So I went ahead and I thought, because I was avoiding that because it wasn't worth my time and I had limited time this week. I really wish I had more time to read the emails.
Yeah,
we're going to have to come back to them next week.
We'll be touching back on this as more comes out because apparently there's 3,000 more.
Right, yeah, there's so many fucking pages of this. So I went ahead and I searched for Gates. And there are 30 instances of the word Gates in the document, the 3,234 pages of emails. So, none of those are from a direct communication of Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates. In fact, Dr. Fauci only mentions Bill Gates or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation a few times. Most of that is handled by other people, and he's copied at the end. So that's more like the department, the National Institute of Health, and the NIAID talking with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, not Bill Gates talking with Dr. Fauci. In fact, the only direct evidence that the two of them talk in person, over voice, because they weren't ever in in-person meetings, is in one email between with Anthony Fauci responding to a person named Trevor Mundell, who is the contact that he has some indirect communications with via another person named Francis Collins at NIH. So that's the person who's copying to Fauci. But Trevor Mundell, he responded to saying, if Bill is seeing the VP tomorrow, he will surely bring it up to me at our 4 p.m. daily task force meeting, talking about one of the opportunities for basically something to do with the vaccines and spreading opportunities for them to others. But basically, yeah, there isn't a there when it comes to there's 30 instances of Gates' name. There aren't 30 times he talked with Bill Gates. There's just 30 instances of the word Gates in the document.
Not to say that there couldn't be, but it doesn't look like at this time there is as sinister a connection as many have implied.
Again, it was likely the case that the Gates Foundation was seeking government contracts from NIH and NIAID, both of which Fauci is effectively in charge of right now. So I think he's the NIAID director, and then I don't remember the position he has in NIH. He might be, I think he's director of NIH. But basically, he's in NIH and NIAID. The Gates Foundation is very interested in getting more contracts with these institutions because government contracts are giant pork barrels. They make anybody who gets a government contract is going to be making good money off of it for very little expectation of return on investment. Now, part of that's by design to allow people to explore more radical ideas that will sometimes lead to very good breakthroughs in technology, say in medicine or in STEM in general. Sometimes you get fantastic discoveries or breakthroughs in tech that otherwise would never have been funded by the private sector. Fine.
Sometimes you get Solyndra.
But that comes at an expense, yeah. And it comes at a major expense, which is that there are major failures. But for every Solyndra you have out there, you have at least 10 Gates Foundations, which are providing some service in return. Whatever you think of them, providing that, and again, this isn't necessarily specific to a lot of the horror stories you hear from the region, but they did do good work in Africa with vaccines. They did do good work in South America with vaccines. Vaccines against common and problematic illnesses, which did need to be addressed. Some of the human experimentation stuff that's on the side of that is horrific, but was not related to the release of vaccines that have known good health and safety records to these people. So while they do excellent work in certain areas, some of their stuff is despicable and either needs to be purged internally or investigated federally, preferably both at this point. But one of the things that the Gates Foundation has been trying to entice Fauci with, it looks like, is a central role, is what they said, in their BARDA program. I don't know what that acronym stands for, BARDA, but that was what it was laid out as. I haven't done any further investigation of what the hell that means. I first saw it today at almost 7 p.m. And we're just we're not even 4 hours after when I saw it, or 5 hours after I saw it. So, whatever that means, they were trying to entice them with this. Basically, they've been trying to offer resources to get contracts, is what it looks like. And again, basically get them a juicy overhead to absorb into their own funds. So the same way that a lot of this, so they, I think, were kind of jealous of the vaccine accelerators that were put out there. So the Operation Warp Speed, that kind of stuff, they were kind of pissed off they weren't tapped at the top of that to get funds or manage funds internally. So thankfully those funds were put to better use trying to get the vaccines out instead of trying to get Bill and Melinda Gates more money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the closer to the people any money goes, the better it gets used. The more organizations' hands it passes through, the less you find at the end of the day.
So again, the take-home message there, the 30 instances of the word Gates are not 30 communications with Bill Gates. In fact, the only direct communication from Anthony Fauci to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is via the representative Trevor Mundell the one time. This happens on page 2,317 of the 3,234 pages. It is dated 10th of March 2020. So that is it's two. The first person in the two is Francis Collins. That's the person he's replying directly to via the email system, but it's copied to Trevor Mundell, and Trevor is the person he's speaking to in the message. It's addressed to Trevor. It says Trevor ditto what Francis said, and then the rest of it. So, yeah, there isn't some conspiracy between Fauci and Bill Gates or whatever. That's just not a thing.
Well, there may be, but there's no evidence of it here.
Right.
If there is any
evidence, it exists elsewhere.
Yeah, this isn't the place to look if you're planning on doing any looking, basically.
So there is evidence via this one email that on occasion Bill Gates is directly involved in some part of the politics at play here. And again, I think it's to beg for money, not to actually do anything nefarious here. I think it's just straight up grift. But basically, what this says is that Bill Gates did talk to Mike Pence at some point, or likely did, and that's also probably something that can be verified with the via FOIA or via public disclosure of the meetings of Mike Pence. So if you can find those and look those up, you'll probably find when and where Bill Gates met with Mike Pence, and that would be something that came up since Fauci was directing the response to COVID. That would be something that was also probably on Anthony Fauci's calendar if that's available, because he is the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease. So that's the NIAID. And that is at NIH. Okay. That's clearer now.
Oh.
But yeah, so for the Gates Foundation, it's a win-win situation. For us, it depends on whether or not what the Gates Foundation actually did was useful. And that's a mixed bag. In the past, it has been. But they're more interested in the global perspective because they're globalist shitheads. And they have no, and mind you, a corporation has no need to be, like no moral responsibility necessarily to be partisan to their country allegiance. Like, there's no reason for the Bill Gates Foundation to care about the U.S.
Yeah, we've seen that quite clearly from any number of individuals that they have no loyalty to the USA.
Yeah, so they have no real compelling reason to besides.
I believe the term
US.
that comes to mind is rootless cosmopolitan.
Sure. So if they have a truly global interest and global perspective because they are multinational in the financial as well as the literal sense. So their vested interest is in getting rid of COVID, and how they go about that is not necessarily going to be in our vested interest as a country.
Well, and of course,
the interests can align, but they don't necessarily have to. And the times they do align is kind of far and few between when it comes to multinationals.
Yeah, more a matter of chance than a matter of purpose. Especially
but again, think of it in a vector sense here. Sometimes there's a component of the direction they're going that does go in the direction of the country. So it's one of those more complicated situations.
Oh, sure.
Point being here also, the Gates Foundation is far more interested in getting the COVAX initiative, which is led by WHO, not by the U.S., to get kind of off the ground and distributing vaccines that are effective. And unfortunately, the WHO instead turned around just recently and said Sinovac is approved, even though it might cause you to lose hearing, and we have no idea what the rate of that is. If it's a low rate, fantastic. A 50% chance of getting an infection afterwards is fucking stupid, in my opinion. But fantastic that it doesn't cause hearing loss.
Well, I will reiterate what I have said ever since I've learned as much as I need to about it. If you're going to get vaccinated, if you're going to make that choice, do your research, 1. 2, take the Janssen vax. Avoid the mRNA because it's just fucking creepy. And if you... well, that's all I'm going to say. Take the Janssen vax if you're going to get vaccinated, unless you have some issue with it.
I'll say this in the interest of balance here, for my own perspective on this, and this is with Steve we'd have the argument, but we're not going to. My perspective is that the Pfizer vaccine at present still has the best safety profile and the best efficacy.
Yeah. Now I will say, if you're comfortable taking an mRNA vaccine, I'm still going to say don't take the Moderna. But if you're comfortable with an mRNA vaccine, the Pfizer is the option that I would have the least issue with. I can say that comfortably.
And again, just to put it out there, in my opinion, the mRNA vaccines, given their history of testing and of other uses and other experimental remedies and the history behind that, and given the similarity in the testing framework and testing times involved and the much larger scale at which these were tested, no more dangerous in my opinion than the seasonal flu vaccines. which are formulated on an annual basis, tested on an annual basis, and then given out in a much shorter time frame on an annual basis. So you can't turn around and say that the flu vaccine has many more years of testing. It's tested within months every year. Yes, it has a longer track record as an overall thing.
Well, you can say that it is a more mature technology.
But this would be why I'd also be safe. I'd also be okay with you saying that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I think it should be an option. I think if you want to go with a more traditional tech, go with Johnson & Johnson. It's a modified adenovirus vaccine, which is a thing that's been around since the late 80s, early 90s. It used to just be, we had crippled virus vaccines, which were more popular in the 90s, definitely popular in the 80s. And then, as far back as what the 50s or 60s, when they really started ramping that up. So, yeah, the adenovirus vaccine is a live virus vaccine. It's not gamma ray irradiated. It's not a crippled vaccine in that sense. It's just one that your body is capable of killing very effectively. But it will stimulate the response that's needed to get the spike protein defended against. It has a lower efficacy, but again, we have a pretty good idea what the side effects are going to be, and it's a traditional form. It's a traditional platform.
There's a quick addendum on that. A quick addendum on the lower efficacy.
Yeah.
It does have the 55% protection from infection, but it has a greater than 85% protection against severe symptoms. Essentially,
back to our earlier talk about different types of efficacy here.
Right.
The other two types of efficacy are I would say on par, if not similar to those of Pfizer and Moderna. The mRNA vaccines right now, from the data at hand, are just superior, just better at stimulating the correct responses. There are still some unknowns in terms of long-term effects, but this is the same with every annual flu vaccine, like I said.
And I promise you, as these come out, we will get to them, and if you see anything weird, get the information to us so that we can cover it. If you've got something on birth defects, if you've got something on women having sudden problems with their pregnancies, I'd be happy to cover that. Get me the information, and we'll get to it. Gladly. At that fake guy Dan for me, at CraigBob99 for him. Do get in touch with us. We'd love to cover it.
Though you probably shouldn't try to talk to me until Wednesday or Thursday this week, because I'm currently in Twitter jail.
Oh, you said it naughty.
Well, no, the exact words I said were "found the ANCOM," which apparently was not appreciated, and this person spent what must have been a horrible time going back through over a year of my tweets, probably reporting every fucking one of them, and getting like 7 or 8 of them reported. So I got a 7-day timeout.
That's pretty impressive. That's some dedication.
The funny thing was, I had just submitted, because someone had just told me, by the way, they opened up the applications for verification again. I went, oh shit, I'm gonna do it just for shits and giggles. I got a 7-day ban. It's like, guess that's gone.
Who knows? Maybe, maybe not.
That would be hilarious.
Wouldn't that be the thing to come back from your 7 days with?
Especially for the amount of shit I'm still going to talk about blue checks if I get the damn thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You'll just
now they'll be able to block me by using that filter by checkmark feature.
Then I can finally call you one of the good ones.
Oh yeah, and the Wire China. This news here. I think this would be interesting for people who think they can get their news from a company like Newsbreak. They're likely being influenced by the CCP.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, just a quick recommendation for anyone that's going to be listening to this. China Unscripted is one of the best sources of information on what China doesn't want you to know right now, whenever that right now is.
So Dave Chappelle has been
these
covering
things.
China for years.
Yeah, they present. It's like the Daily Show used to be, but they're a lot more serious about actually covering the news when they're serious about it.
So the Uncovered is the podcast. China Uncensored is his multi-weekly. I think it's 3 or 4 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was originally 2 times a week. It might be 2 or 3 times now. But it's a YouTube show he does. Dave Chappelle. He also does America Uncovered. All fantastic things to watch. He's got an excellent writing team behind him. He's part of the team that does look into these things. He's been covering stuff with China.
They do real journalism, real on the ground journalism.
He's been doing it since like the early 2000s, back when he didn't have a beard. But he's been covering stuff like Falun Gong and political prisoners and the organ harvesting shit, like since well before anybody was bringing it up over here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure and put a link to. I'll put a link to that.
Yeah, he's been doing it at his own risk on the ground. Like he covered Hong Kong when they were tear gassing him back when Obama was president. Like he in Hong Kong. So the guy knows what he's talking about, and he has multiple shows a week.
China launches the 3-child policy.
There we go. Yeah, there was a short preview of their channel. I'll have a link to that here.
I highly recommend watching him. He's great, and he's also very balanced and objective about things when he's not making jokes about them. Obviously, he doesn't like China, but that's from experience more than from just being a cynic.
Yeah, it's not an unreasoned position.
So, in a company that I would say has more hatred for China, but and again, reasoned largely because they're more based out of Hong Kong than out of China, so there's kind of a bias there. But if you're looking for perspective in that sense, and you can tell it because they always call it the CCP virus, NTD News China is fantastic for checking out what's going on with China. They do a daily episode that's around an hour long. Cut out the commercial breaks, kind of hour long. So it's a little bit of a slog if you don't have much time, but if like you're doing mindless work, you can just listen to it in the background. And if you, and a lot of times these things will intermingle with American affairs, just from the nature of the two countries and our involvement in trade. A lot of these things do have crossover. So I'd say that around 60 or so % of the news that is covered is relevant to America.
Well, yeah, as we are dealing with an emergent superpower.
Right. So it's just another news source. You'd probably just pick one or the other for to throw into your daily mix on any given day. Dave Chappelle is he's hilarious in his own way. Daily Show is a good approximation. He's not as funny as Jon Stewart, but he is funny.
Well, they're also covering more serious topics, and they're more serious about their topics.
That's true.
So the funny, it's like the funny in an action movie. It's not a comedy. It's just, you got a joke here and there.
Right.
And they add some levity to a very serious topic, which basically when you're talking about CCP involved projects, they're generally all deathly serious.
So speaking of something that MTD News brought up that I posted in the show ideas, China's response to the U.S. basically saying, "Oh, well, the lab leak looks like a serious thing," is to say to have one of their public officials announce on social media that maybe they should build up a nuclear supply.
Yeah, if that's not telling to you, then there's something a little wrong. I mean, when you say, hey, we'd really like some answers to this, and we're really thinking that maybe this lab leak, maybe that did happen, and your response is, we're gonna kill you if you do that. That raises some eyebrows,
1,300 nukes.
Yeah, I mean, 1,300 nuclear warheads. That's kind of that's a bit of an odd knee-jerk reaction. It kind of makes activates the almonds, you might say.
So this is a country that's building up their naval fleet right now, building up their army for 10 to 20 years from now by implementing programs to make their men more masculine, just by social conditioning. So really, really kind of placing a full-on communist win if you show up and you're a manly man. So they can get people to go into their army. And that's just, they're selling that across the nose here, and the fawning retards in government here, like, say, Bernie, who still won't acknowledge that Venezuela happened. They're still crying about Russia, and my guess is because it's not fucking communist enough, and then praising aspects of China, or just ignoring them like they did Venezuela. China's building a fleet. They're not only effing around in the South China Sea with Malaysia and Indonesia, let alone Taiwan. They're not only flexing their military in that sense, they're actively building it right now for what, as I mentioned, I think back in our early episodes, my suspicion is that this might result, just through the way the politics are playing out, in World War III sometime this decade, which is a horrifying thought. And again, I hope I'm wrong.
Too true.
But it's a possibility. They're surrounded by trigger situations which could set one off. And the only real advantage we would have is if they set one off early like idiots, and then we crushed the problem.
Well,
not the country, of course, mind you, but just if they tried to take Taiwan, just make it damn clear that they're not getting it, and then China has to back down. But they kind
of did with this, with this CCP lab leak problem they've got that people are finally talking about. So that's put them into a really, really unfavorable footing.
But that's the thing. We were dealing with them under Trump. We were dealing with them in the trade war. We had to be nice to them. Biden's still being nice to them, and he demanded an answer within 90 days to give the intelligence agencies not enough time to come to a conclusive answer. So hopefully when they come back and say we need more time, it's not going to be, oh, well, they need more time. Obviously it doesn't exist. The main problem here is that they will, at some point in the future, and it probably won't be this year, it probably won't even be next year, the year after that, they will eventually have enough ships to physically blockade Taiwan. Even if American ships are never going to be beaten one-on-one when it comes to our naval fleet. We are that advanced right now. But when it comes to cheap steel and putting it in the ocean, China has the advantage. They just have more people, more manpower, more natural resources to pull from when it comes to putting a ship into the ocean. They could have a higher density of ships capable of overcoming our capacity to break through. If they physically blockade Taiwan before we see a problem, it's the inverse of the Cuban Missile Crisis all of a sudden. It becomes that problem. They could easily blockade us from being able to help Taiwan as they raid it and take it over, such that America can't intervene. It becomes another Hong Kong or worse.
Indeed. And we've already seen what they've done in Hong Kong, having taken it over. They've wasted absolutely no time in completely crushing human rights.
Yeah. So that is a major problem that could be coming out of this. And just to, throw nuclear deterrence in our face at this point, they're desperate for us to not try to do anything right now to put pressure on them. But fortunately for them, they have the Manchurian candidate in office, so it's not going to happen in the first place. What they're really worried about, as I suspect will happen in 2021, they're worried really. 2022. They're really worried about a flip in our legislature, and then the ability of our legislature to start passing laws without Biden being involved, to basically restrict his options for largesse and compel action on Taiwan, or say on the India-China dispute for the line of actual control, or in Nepal with the Belt and Road Initiative taking that over.
Speaking
Pakistan,
of the Belt and Road Initiative, as a matter of fact, that is directly tied to this. We've talked about it a bit at some other times, but just as a quick reminder, many of the recipients of this Belt and Road money and Belt and Road work and Belt and Road infrastructure projects. These are, I won't say they're becoming vassal states. There are some states that are going so deeply into debt to China that they are essentially selling out their souls. But what's happening in a lot of these places, I believe Djibouti is a perfect example, where a massive, massive modern port facility was built. And, I mean, how many people even know that Djibouti is a place? So, this they've got this massive facility, and, well, it's great and all, but what are they going to do with it? Well, not much. They don't really have any of the other connecting infrastructure or the business to even require such a thing. So China has written in there, hey, if you can't pay for it, we've got you, fam. What we'll do, we'll just activate the 99-year lease and then, give it back to you after that 99 years. Provided, there's still a you to give it back to. But, well, something to quabble about in 99 years.
And a port is a more extravagant example of the kind of infrastructure they're putting in place. And they're doing this all over the world, mind you. They've been doing it for a couple decades to try and make the Chinese century a thing. They want to replace America as the superpower, and one of the ways they're doing it is by going throughout Africa and South America to get into the economics of those regions so that they can replace the dollar with the yen or the Chinese yuan. And
they don't care about these people at all. They
economy.
do not care. So the thing is, when they get into these places, the resources that we are begging these people, please, you've got this, you've got that, please use them. We're going to help you build this so that you can build a mine and mine this thing that you have and sell to the world. Please don't rip up the tracks and sell them for steel. We help them build that. The tracks still get ripped up and sold for steel. But China, they go in and they do that, and then they, there's a great documentary. If the term "it's all so tiresome" means anything to you, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. And indeed, it is all so very, very tiresome. But those folks, they don't really care about the native populace. They're there to get a job done. And they will get the job done one way or the other.
Northern Italy is a good example of this. The leather producing industry of Northern Italy. This is one of the reasons why Italy was hit so damn hard by COVID. The northern region of Italy is largely leather production, and the vast majority of leather production in Northern Italy right now is China owned and China operated, because that's just the way the economics worked out over time. They bought it up. And if you might guess, for those who don't know, and we've mentioned this before, a lot of the 5 million people that left Wuhan before the lockdown really happened went to northern Italy, because most of the people who work in northern Italy in the leather industry from China commute from Wuhan. So they just went to their job and left before the lockdown because they knew they had a place to go.
And as we also know, China made no bones about people leaving Wuhan. They had no issues with leaving Wuhan as long as you weren't going anywhere else in China. If you were headed elsewhere in China, you were locked the fuck down. But if you're leaving the country, hey, have a great time. Very peculiar, that. Very peculiar.
Yeah, it's like I said, they learned the wrong lessons from SARS and MERS.
Well, but they did take something away from our dear friend Rahm Emanuel. Never let a crisis go to waste.
So the China infiltration of infrastructure is actually a lot closer to home than you realize. The drug cartels that supply fentanyl to the United States are largely paid in Chinese yen, and it's the way that China controls them, because they will trade with China or trade with other countries that are starting to deal with Chinese yen in South America to get their infrastructural stuff done. And China holds their power over them by the ability to artificially devalue the currency and make them penniless out of nowhere. They could easily just take away half their value overnight like doubling the currency in China. So between that and the fact that China, Huawei was big on 5G in Canada and the UK, and that has thankfully been reversed. Like they're actually a lot closer to home than you realize. Huawei was even had proposals in for 5G in the US prior to them being banned for technology that the military and government uses, which basically destroyed the ability of them to get good U.S. contracts.
And shortly thereafter, they were also banned from Google as well. So they have only just recently fully recovered from that, having developed their own operating system.
Right.
That, a matter of fact, that was last month that it was released.
It's funny because Android is open source, so they can still use it to the heart's content. They just can't use the Google.
The Google fork.
They are not able to use the proprietary components of the Google fork on their devices, and that cripples their devices. So they have to basically have to develop their own Play Store and their own Google search functionality kind of thing, etc. But all the proprietary stuff is all there. Basically, what they did was they took Android and they slapped their own label on it, and then they called it Chinese. They said it's ours now, which it should sound very familiar when it comes to intellectual property in general that goes into China.
Yeah, kind of par for the course, as you might say.
A lot of their innovation, and they admit it themselves, though without explicitly admitting it, they admit it themselves where a lot of the innovations that they make don't happen until foreign countries come in and get them to do things. Basically, their way of maintaining pride is to say that they get the expertise from the experience of performing the tasks required to make these innovations work. So they're still somehow the people making it happen. But the reality is that they get the technology, they get to see the inner workings of it and see how it works because they have to make it work for U.S. customers or Australian customers, etc.
Yeah.
So they get the deep dive on the technology, and they have to know how to make it work in order to produce the product, and then they have the know-how and they just rip it off, which is a fantastic way to do things as a country from an external perspective. It's horrible.
They're having to do almost no innovation.
Right.
Like everybody else is doing all the legwork. All they've got to do is just build the products.
It's the same way that, like, say, Bell Labs, etc., back in the 80s decided to start offloading all their innovation on the universities after the Bayh-Dole Act got passed, which is, again, the shittiest act when it comes to intellectual property law and universities, because universities price themselves out of the market from patents, expecting a fucking 30% return on an investment like that. Like, imagine licensing a patent and saying, "I want 30% of your product." Like, whatever you get out of it, I want 30%.
Yeah, it's
asinine.
That's a big.
It's non-negotiable. Right. So then the company just says, "Okay," turns around and figures it out for themselves, and then you can't do shit about it. It's stupid.
Well, that there's a lot of that involving schools in the States. And
some universities are getting better at it. Yeah, some universities are getting better at it. Some are not. I'm fortunate in that the two universities I attended are fairly good about these things. Although, unfortunately, with UF, the Dr. Cage is the reason why the what we call the Gatorade clause exists, and that is basically anything you do while you're an employee there belongs to the university, and it's very clear when you sign that contract what you're signing.
Yeah. I'm actually somewhat familiar with that, but it's similar to so many other stories. Somebody worked at a place, had a fairly ironclad contract, came up with something to use during that, and, well, they own the rights. Sorry.
Important thing here, and I would always recommend doing this, is read the contracts you sign. If you're ever surprised by the outcome of the contract, you did not read it right.
Read your contracts. Very important.
Having some understanding of the fact that a business relationship is going to take precedence over personal relationships when it comes to business and especially when you're an employee.
This
Your
is why
boss.
they say you shouldn't do business with friends, because at the end of the day, the business is going to come first. It might not. It very well might not. You might have that friend that is a true friend, but it's not safe to assume that, because those true friends are few and far between.
I would say this: going into business with friends when you have clear expectations of what's going on is fine. Becoming an employee of a friend is a different matter entirely. If you're friends before you get employed by somebody, you should expect the kind of employee boss frictions to happen regardless of how good friends you are. And if you can separate that, if you can get workplace private life separation, perfect. If you can't, and inevitably there's going to be some degree of can't there, that's going to be a place where that hurts. But if you're going in as business partners and you're on equal footing and you know what you're doing, a lot of it will come down to just having arguments. But at the end of the day, you're both equally in business together, so whoever's right's right. Sometimes it's not clear, but sometimes it is.
Sure enough.
Oh, and then I see Zuckerberg is upset. I got caught on tape upset.
The leaks indeed. That's not really something that we've been covering because it's kind of been a developing story, but it's also something that everybody already knows. But with the leaks that came out recently, showing us, again, what we already knew, what's happened now is more leaks about said leaks, and Zuckerberg is very unhappy that they're happening.
Yeah, so it's not just Zuckerberg, it's also the lady in there, I can't remember what the hell she's in charge of. It's hilarious because she talks about how open the culture in Facebook is, and then she talks about how that is threatened by the leaks. It's like, okay, so either it's open or it's not open. I understand that there are business secrets that need to be kept secret in order to make the business function, but at the same time, if you're going to espouse and tout this open culture, it better be fucking open. And this is just the opposite of open, the way she's talking about shit.
Oh, yeah. Quite literally.
Again, the thing is, she talks about putting employees in danger. It's like, normally I would say that is just such bullshit. But with the way that Facebook has been fucking around and the ridiculous degree to which things were going on, like, for instance, Parler getting taken offline, even though all the planning for the January 6th riots happened on Facebook months in advance. Like, that is one of those things that actually does make people who are the central part of a leak from Facebook physically in danger. Like, that kind of backward-ass, asinine circumstance will easily make people who are willing to walk into the Capitol building and break shit down probably willing to walk into a house and break shit down.
Yeah, not a big amount of difference. And when you take somebody and you take away their humanity and tell them that they no longer have any rights, I mean, have they really got all that much to lose?
So at the end of this, the lady's complaining about something that is, oddly enough, unfortunately, I have to agree, a real physical concern for personal safety and security. But you wouldn't be in this position in the first fucking place if you hadn't done this heinous shit. The lab leak is now okay, but they took multiple New York Post stories off of Facebook for mentioning it.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, they heavily censored people for this. And then they had a system that was they're experimenting with to put in place from the way the documents described it. They were experimenting on a small percentage of Facebook users, but it was basically probably going to be scaled up to the user base if it came out to be something that they thought was successful. They were looking at assigning a vaccine hesitancy score. Even if the thing you were talking about was true, factually accurate, did happen, and you weren't upset about the vaccines. Even if you were telling people to get vaccinated, and you were just, say, talking about the say with Janssen,
basically you're Tim
Janssen
Pool,
Vax.
And you're just reporting on it.
Say you're Tim Pool and you're reporting on the Janssen Vax pause, and you talk about the 8 people who did get CVST. Suddenly, you're talking about that makes you vaccine hesitant, and there are 2 levels of that, and that was like level 1. The other one was for like anti-vaxxer people.
And now, if this Now,
They're
since we
stupid,
were
but
only
just
just recently
so
talking
stupid.
about the CCP as well, if this doesn't smack of a social credit score, then you haven't been paying attention.
So again, we already have the idea of a social credit score kind of ingrained in private infrastructure in the country. You remember that? Remember Clout, that platform that was supposed to give you a score?
Indeed,
Like
I do.
it was a fucking joke here, but that was a form of social credit. Yeah, there are plenty of those platforms that popped up overnight in the United States. And why did that happen? It's probably because that was a push by Silicon Valley techs to make their roles compatible with Chinese roles, or at least with counterpart roles in mainland.
Yeah, we
So
should say
it's
West Taiwanese principles, as it were,
right.
with communist characteristics.
The WTCP. There you go.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, so I'm sorry if I don't know if you want to jump in, by the way, Liz, at any time you're welcome to. If it just sounds like I'm going off.
I'm mostly just listening, so.
Oh yeah, don't feel
Fair
the
enough.
need to, and please don't feel like we have to keep you here or anything if you've got to go. So, glad you were.
Well,
able to stay.
I regularly listen to the podcast anyway, so I'm learning just as much as I would if I was listening when you post it later. So.
Hey, cool. Yeah, you're getting the show early, I guess, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. So,
oh shit! Now that she's technically got a fiduciary interest, what's her current total?
Oh, the running total? We're well, we got a big, well,
Have we cracked
10. No, but we did go from 538 last week in the one platform to actually just on that same platform 561. So,
hey, no shit.
That's pretty rapid growth, and I have to give a big shout out and a thanks to Notch. So thanks, Marcus. You rock, dude.
No, really?
Yeah.
Did he?
We might have a new listener. So if you're listening, Marcus, man, I hope you like the show, brother. You do some really cool work, man. Keep it up. I'll be interested to see your next project, and if you ever want to come on, we're here, man.
Yeah, dude. Minecraft to this day, even with all the shit that Microsoft's done to it, like the Java version, clicks and goes. It is still amazing.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. It's really kind of magical. It really is. It's one of those it just work things that actually just works.
And I'll say this also, just much as I was annoyed at it because of the possibility of dev directions, it's still been maintained relatively well. And I don't blame you at all for selling out.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, man. That's a lot of money. Good on you, brother. You did the right thing.
If it was 100,000, I'd be like, yeah, what the fuck are you doing? But like a couple billion, holy shit.
You'd be wrong to say no. So we're kind of, if you can't tell, we're losing a little bit of steam. And as you may have noticed on some of the more recent episodes, I do like to try and end on a high note. And I've got a couple of good high notes to end on. So we're going to do that.
All right.
I linked all this up actually earlier today. There's a drug duo, cocktail, if you will, that's looking like a COVID cure, like a drug. So this is something you would just give a person. Yeah, a very good, efficacious treatment. And another interesting thing that we can kind of take from this, aside from just systematic approaches that it gives us access to, is this spike protein is something relatively new for us dealing with. So if we can find new ways of dealing with this specific spike protein that has a, shall we say, uncanny resemblance to the HIV spike protein, then it will make us that much more
I should make a point here while we're on this.
Yeah.
Coronaviruses in general have spike proteins.
They do.
So the S1
that's why it is a
spike
coronavirus.
Protein,
that is the crown referenced, is that spike protein.
The S1 spike protein is common. The proteins are large structures. They're not like a few elements, not a few atoms. They're very large structures. So mutations in the code for them can cause change. So you can think of it as a very rough surface, but it's rough in a way that, say, if an antibody tries to bind to it, if it doesn't have the same kind of indents and divots or teeth, if they don't line up, it'll slip right off. So it's very easy for the spike protein to maintain the functionality that's required at the binding site end of it, while having the non-binding areas of it substantially different enough that antibodies are not capable of recognizing it. So spike proteins are fairly common. Coronavirus is characterized by them. HIV has it. There's plenty of other viruses that exhibit spike proteins. I shouldn't say modifications. The differences between the spike proteins present on SARS-CoV-2 and that coronavirus that it's suspected to have originated from, and whichever way that happened, the differences that exist are uncannily similar to the residues that are present on the HIV spike protein that allow it to be so effective at invading certain cells.
Indeed.
In a way that it doesn't look like it's easily a natural thing.
It's very
even
curious.
though it is entirely possible.
Very curious.
So it looks like it has the mark of specific editing. That's also possible that it's not the case. It could be that the gain of function was done on completely different parts of the genome, and that just happened to be the way that it showed up in the lab.
Yeah.
But it looks way less likely that those specific changes that are coincident in the strain that originally spread around the world would have happened in such a short period of time between what was showing up in the cave and what was showing up in the lab. It's not likely that it was
incredibly
that
convenient and very peculiar. Though it could happen in nature, it is not at all likely.
Not very likely.
But what I
remember, it's a machine, so it could happen. It's just the percent chances off in the tail.
Yeah, but we have a new treatment for this, and what we can take from these treatments too, because of its similarity to this dastardly killer, we should be perhaps a little more equipped to deal with said dastardly killer. For what value we can take from that. But I'll put a link to this first one. This is, it's Cefarthine. It's, which is an HIV drug. And it would be used in concert with, oh man, this one is just too long for me to even bother. Anyway, these two things would be used together, and it's showing great efficacy in treatment.
I'll read them. Which paragraph are they mentioned in?
Let me reopen that. I just closed it.
There's Tedra's name.
It says the type of cells. I don't think it has the other drug listed, but the type of Nelfinavir. Okay, well that's the other one. Sorry, I was looking at this. The Vero E6/TMPRSS2 cells. I wasn't even going to mention it because I have no idea what that is.
This is the link that you sent?
Yeah, the team of scientists with the drug duo. It's the one that's got the pink dropper.
Oh, so wait a second. Okay, so this isn't what you just posted.
Oh yeah, no. Scroll farther up.
Okay. I was trying to say, where is this mentioned on here?
Yeah, we've been busy talking in the Showlinks section instead of the chat section, but it happens. What are you gonna do?
Okay, Nelfinavir, and then Cefaranthine.
Oh yeah, I said that completely wrong. Okay, Cefaranthine. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
But yeah,
Nelfinavir, Cefaranthine.
This is still kind of early on, but this Could be another treatment. There looks like they're going into clinical use.
Okay, so this increases, this speeds up the clearance of SARS-CoV-2 from patients' lung by as few as 4.9 days. So,
which
the idea is
people can remember, a lot of the issues with that is when it gets deep into your lungs is at about the 1 week to 2 week area. That's when problems have begun, and you're getting into the you're in a real danger and things are getting fucked up kind of stage. So, like, this is big news. It's a big deal. I mean, that's getting people before it gets to that true danger point.
So, Nalfinavir, in the same line of things like remdesivir, antiretroviral drug. So, coronaviruses are retroviruses, meaning they inject RNA, which via their own injection payload includes a bit of reverse transcriptase, which turns that RNA into DNA, which is then coded in as mRNA, which is what the ribosomes will then turn into the proteins necessary to put together the viruses, including replicating the original RNA. So the complement RNA that is injected into the cells has to be interpreted before it can be used properly by the cell to produce more viruses. And if you can just bind up the ability of that to happen with one of these antiretrovirals, then it can inject as much of that RNA into the body as it pleases. It'll all degrade before it has the chance to actually be read into the intermediate states that are required to get to the point where it's replicating. So it's throwing a small wrench into a big engine kind of thing, and there's new and improved small wrenches every year.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've got one good one there, and we've got another that's I've got that one linked directly below that one, an herbal treatment, which I've told folks that I've been using a pretty extensive list of herbal treatments to just try and make my immune system as capable as it can be, and well, it looks like there's big folks that are doing the same kind of things. So what they're using here is RDS, respiratory detox shot. That's just an over-the-counter deal.
9 herbal ingredients. Okay. Well, you got to remember that a lot of modern medicine does come from traditional medicine. The reason why it's no longer just used in the way that traditional medicine is used is largely because of the imprecision of it. You're not guaranteed to get the outcome that you're trying to get with the variance that occurs within natural products.
Well, I mean, we can take this to something that people will actually recognize very readily, and that's the pot market. You look at things 30 years ago, you've got, 5, 10, 20 named strains, and then you've got a bunch of whatever. It all showed promise, and it all did a little of this and a little of that, but now we have specific strains that have very real and very specific effects, very specific medicinal effects.
Stupid thing you could ever take, yeah.
We have Charlotte's Web, which, saved a child's life, brought them out of having terrible seizures.
So what I need to see is what the ingredients are, instead of just it has 9 ingredients. Because right now what it looks like is everyone's reporting RDS or this something or another.
It's called respiratory detox shot. So
okay, so this at least has a thing on it. Let's see. Do I recognize any of these?
Okay. We have. Oh Christ! I'm gonna have to zoom in on this.
Links. Yeah, I can't see this I can't see very well into the ingredients on this label. Shit. Okay, does it have any images?
We've got elderberry juice, water.
Okay.
Laurensera japonica, Forsythia suspensia, Panax ginseng.
So ginseng.
Schizonepida, Tenifolia, Scolofugia,
Scophilaria.
Yes.
Um,
Ningp.
Ningponensis.
Yes. Prunus americana.
Prunus
Polistus mondarius.
mandarinus.
Caesurae. Gladio
Sinensis. And
sinensis.
then Glycyrrhiza urulensis. Glycyrrhiza urulensis.
So
I
there's
think
your
that's
ingredients.
Glycyrrhiza, that's licorice. Glycyrrhizin is
Now, black licorice is actually fairly good. Well, not licorice, but I mean the ingredients of it are fairly good for you.
So licorice root is fine in relatively low doses. It is good in moderation. It is, however, horrible for you if you exceed moderation. It will rapidly rise your blood pressure to a dangerous point, and you will have many horrible organ complications.
So we're looking at something that's kind of in the same vein as an acetaminophen aspirin kind of situation, where
Also,
a little
here's the
bit
difference
is fine and maybe good for you, but too much can start shutting down your organs.
Here's the problem with it. Glycyrrhizin is the reason, and it's the part that makes licorice sweet. So it's a natural sugar, and it is the main problem. Now you can get. It's funny because they sell deglycyrrhizated licorice, which is deglycyrrhizinated licorice, which is it's its own cocktail word there for you. But
I'll leave that one to you for now.
DGL is I've taken it, so on occasion I have a thing that happens with a foot, and then I have to take enough NSAIDs over time that I could possibly ruin my stomach lining. And I have a tough stomach, but I've already had one incident where I felt like I had put a hole in it, and apparently that was mild. I hadn't done anything. But basically, DGL thickens up your stomach lining. It's already a naturally thickening substance, but you can get tablets of it, and they're just chewables, and they taste awesome, of course, because they're licorice. But you can only have 3 of them at a time because it thickens everything up that goes through you. So obviously, too much would be very, very bad the next day. A lot of licorice is a lot of the natural product licorice that's used in like candies and whatnot is really flavored with anise or anise fennel. But there are deglycyrrhizinated licorice components or ingredients in some candies, or they'll just use licorice. But yeah, the poisonous licorice, which is not licorice root but a different plant, don't eat that at all. All parts of that will kill you. I actually looked into growing some of this, and I had to find that out real quick. When you start looking for seeds, I'm not going to because it takes too damn long to do it, and I don't have the space for it. But like, you don't want to get the wrong licorice.
True that. Well, not unlike your mushroom selections. If you're out picking and you don't know what you're picking, don't eat that stuff.
Yeah, you don't want to get the wrong cap in you.
But that being said, what we're looking at here is a relatively safe product, but, don't go down in a whole bunch of these things.
So this looks interesting. I'd be interested to see like what parts might actually be effective here. I mean, ginseng, blood flow, obviously. Anything in glycyrrhiza is probably going to have something to do with blood flow and a balance of a couple different components. And then some of these others might be in the same kind of line of reasoning. But like I can easily see this as like a way to mobilize mucous membranes and also to maintain their general health, and then also to increase blood flow, all of which would allow you to have basically a more efficient way of filtering out what's going through at the place where it could enter your body, and have easier access for antibodies to get there and white blood cells to get there and do the thing. I don't know if it's necessarily going to like treat something well, but it might be that it does. If only just keeping the immune system in action by making it easier to get where it needs to be.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if we've got another efficacious treatment, that's just all the better. And we're looking at something that's completely over the counter and very safe. So, hey, if you want to go and pick yourself up a bottle of RDS, looks like it's about $30. if
Holy
you're
shit.
worried,
Hold on. For how many ounces?
I did not check. I want to say 8, but that's just me just saying a number off the top of my head.
Nope, I'm not gonna.
Oh no, 2.
Go into it. Holy shit! How many ounces is a dose, though? How much are you supposed to have at a time?
60 milliliters.
Okay, that's like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Holy shit!
Well, I think this is one of those you just.
Yeah, this isn't a 5-hour energy.
No, you. Oh wow. Okay, yeah. They want you to take a bit. I'd say you know what? I wouldn't say anything because I don't know. I would say if you're interested,
That's the right answer.
look over their information, see what they have to say on the frequency of taking it. As you've heard from us, it's generally safe, and don't go crazy.
I would not chug it, like a lot of it.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that the amount that they sell is safe enough that they're never going to have a complaint from the FDA or a lawsuit that they can't win.
And it is showing actual use in some treatment. So hey, don't feel threatened at all by that. And I have one last piece of incredibly good news, and even incredibly good news for our guest on the show. I'm sure you already know, but the Ninth Circuit, a certain wonderful judge, has vacated the decades-old assault weapons ban. Huzzah, huzzah.
Yes.
Let the salt flow like the oceans.
Suck it, Newsom.
You suck, gruesome Newsom. Deal with it.
Hashtag recall Newsom.
Indeed.
Is that when's the? So I think that has to be on ballot. When is that election going to be held? Do you know? When's that referendum going to be held?
I don't know off the top of my head. I would actually have to look that up.
Would that probably just be election day for this year, or would that be next year?
Yeah.
You think?
They're trying to get it on this year, but I don't know if it's going to happen. So I don't know what the actual date for that will be. But I signed the petition in either case, so.
Yeah. God damn! I hope he's out on his ass and crying. I mean, the sad part is they might put someone in who's even worse, but at the same time, at least there's a chance for someone better to go into.
Well, I mean, you may be looking at your most progressive governor of all time. Very possibly. I think old Bruce has the stones to do the job.
Well, I think also on at that level, the kind of failures that he permitted should not be rewarded with any more time in office.
Oh no, absolutely not. I mean, you want to talk about an absolutely. You can say abysmal failure, and that really kind of speaks poorly of failures because. Honestly, what he's done smacks of malice.
Yeah, I mean, and again, not to go back to and to harp on too many things here, because it is a good note that this motherfucker is getting out. Like it was, I think a lot of these lockdowns, with the way the policies are driven, a lot of it was partisan in the implementation, more so than it was ever designed around safety.
Oh,
and it's disgusting and disturbing and sad. So, the California-Florida difference is so stark in the way that things were handled and the way that the outcomes happened. There's no way you can kind of circle around it and say, oh, but there are these other factors there. No, it was pretty clear what happened.
Well, I mean, if you want the clearest case of all, just look at Texas. Even despite the fact that the Biden administration is flooding them with unvaccinated, shall we say, immigrants, and not call them illegal aliens.
Illegal aliens.
So, right. Well, I don't like. I prefer the term criminal alien, but whichever floats your boat. But these criminal aliens that are just flooding over the border and then being brought further over the border by his promises. Even with all of this, Texas manages and is doing great. They're open back up. They're being smart. They're doing the right things. People are surviving. people are thriving, even.
So key distinction there that made it happen the way it happened. And it's what I said the entire damn time after we got past the point where lockdowns were a reasonable suspicion of being a thing that were going to be done right. After say the 30th day of 15 days. Adults can make adult decisions. And once you give them, if you give them the information to make informed adult decisions, they will make informed adult decisions. And that is their responsibility. Safety is a personal responsibility. You are the first person in charge of it. This is true anywhere and everywhere you go. You are in charge of your safety first. And if you explain that to someone and say, here are the tools to get the job done safely, whatever that is, even if it's going outside during certain times of the year, apparently, people will do what they need to do to get things done. People aren't going out there looking to get infected unless they're one of those crazy people that bug chase after AIDS.
And,
so
that's a demographic that we don't. Maybe we're better off letting that demographic chase their bugs and find their cliffs.
Unfortunately, we've made it so that they can live a hell of a lot longer.
Unfortunately, we have.
If that's their intent. And my point being with them that they aren't just intent on getting AIDS, but also giving it.
Yeah, gift receivers are bad enough. Gift givers are a plague upon the face of the earth in the most literal of terms that you can imagine.
But only misdemeanors over in California, haven't you heard?
Thanks, Gavin. Thanks for turning murderers into, oopsies.
Slow murderers.
Sorry, I killed you. My bad.
Anyway. Yeah, this looks interesting. I'd be more interested to see what's inside this herbal supplement, and I think that getting rid of that law it's so awesome.
Yes. So congratulations to any Californians listening, and to the Californian here with us. I'm so happy to hear that that's happened. Make sure and go and pick yourself up a nice modern sporting rifle as soon as you get the chance, and make sure that magazine holds at least 30 rounds.
Yeah.
Because that's the way God intended for it.
And
gotta get yourself some boating accidents.
Boy, don't I know it. I've had so many boating accidents. I don't think I even own anything other than airsoft anymore.
So I purposely muted myself when you were saying your piece, but before we went out here, I know. Unfortunately, that's no consolation for the loss you found yourself with, and truly sad that's happened in your life.
So we live.
Well, thank you.
And we get on, and that's all we can do, right?
At least you can take some comfort in that they're no longer suffering with the problems they had at hand.
Sad as a statement like that is.
Right.
Yeah, well, at least we have a chance that we can tell the story now, because the stuff that's coming out.
But they have names.
The stuff that's coming out now, yes, the stuff that's coming out now, you can't censor us anymore. So their names are Mike Petrano and Michelle Crotty, and say their names.
And now their names will exist forever as part of this production, and they're not going anywhere. So remember that, Fauci, you fucker. And I hope your life is less fulfilling than it has been up until now. You evil man.
So you never suffer what you've imparted on the planet.
Indeed. May all the darkness that you have donned never be meted out to you in a form of which you are most deserving. May you never have to suffer the justice that calls for you, sir. So, if you've got anything for us, ideas, show ideas, anything else, again, I'm Evan. I'm at that fake guy Dan everywhere except Facebook, because cyborg lizards are weird. You can find Craig at most places at CraigBob99. And, well, get in touch. There will be a live aspect to this soon. Still working on it. The streaming works. My internet is stable and functional. So it's just a matter of logistics and software. So, been a pleasure talking to all of you. Been a pleasure having you as our guest, Liz. Thank you for
Thank you.
being here, and thank you for tuning in up until now. And with that, everyone, be well, be safe, keep your powder dry, and keep your ear to the ground, because it's always crazy. And if it's not crazier in a bad way one week, well, sometimes you get one like this where it's a little bit of good crazy news, and by God, we can use it. So, talk to you again soon.